Good day everyone, you're welcome to the channel. This is Uglo Fashion and thank you so much for stopping by. In our tutorial class today, I'll be sharing the making of this built-up neckline with shoulder darts bustier. So please stay tuned and enjoy the tutorial. It's well detailed and also beginner friendly. So I drafted the bodice pattern on my pattern paper. I marked 3 inches. So the 3 inches will serve as the built-up neckline. So every other measurement I'll be inputting will start directly after the 3 inches. So I first marked 7 inches for chest line, 10 inches for bust point, 13 inches for under bust, then 17 inches for half length. Then I ruled everything out respectively. Back to the starting point, I marked the shoulder span, which is 15 inches divided by 2, that's 7.5. Then I connect it to the chest line. Then to my left hand side, I marked 3.5 inch for the neckline width. So, and back to the shoulder side, I marked 1 inch downward. This is for the shoulder slope. I proceed to connect the two together, then used my curve ruler to curve the armhole out. Now we are done with the armhole side. Next is the bust point. So I input the necessary measurements. My bust point is 36 divided by 4, that's 9 inches. Under bust is 30 inches divided by 4, that's 7.5 inches. Half length 7.5 also. So whatever I marked at the bust point, I had 1 inch to it and marked it at the chest line. So which means I'll mark 10 inches at the chest line. This is just to give it a slant shape for the armhole. So I mark 10 inch, then I proceed to connect the dots with my ruler. Next is to mark the necessary dart. First is the chest dart. So I divided the nipple span by 2, which is 7 inches divided by 2, that's 3.5, and I proceed to mark it from the bust point to the half length. After that, I measured the side dart. The side dart is just the difference between the back bodies and the front bodies half length. Mine is 1 inch, so I marked 1 inch at the under bust. Then I use ruler to connect it back to the nipple point. Then I measure the remaining inches I have at the shoulder slope. So that's 4 inches divided by 2. I divided it into 2, that's 2 inches. So I mark the 2 inches. Then I connect with ruler back to the bust point. Next, I marked 1 inch at the center front under bust and also 1 inch at the side front under bust, and also repeat the same action at the half length. So I picked the curve ruler to connect from under bust back to the bust point. I connected it this way so that it will give me a curve shape. You can see the way it is. So this is for the bust here. Now we are done with the shoulder darts bustier. Next, I proceed to mark the back pattern. Though we aren't done with the front pattern, but this back will serve as guide for the neckline, for the built-up neckline of the front. So I proceed to mark the zipper allowance. I used 1 inch. You can use up to 2 inches if you like. So I mark the zipper allowance out and also input the necessary measurement for the back. Next, I proceed to mark the dart, and for the darts, I marked 3.5 inches after the zipper allowance. Though I ought to have reduced the back with 1 inch because back and front are not equal, but I later corrected it when I realized I haven't reduced the 1 inch. So this is for the darts guide. So, and I connected it also to the 2 inches at the shoulder, and at the half length here, I marked ½ inch on both sides, that is the center front and the side front, and I connected it back to the bust point this way. Next, I proceed to the neckline and I mark 1 inch for the neck width and connect with curve ruler. So at the half length, I marked ½ inch. This is to erase any board. I marked ½ inch at the zipper allowance and I connected it back to the chest line zipper allowance. So, and I labeled them accordingly. So back to the 1 inch I mentioned earlier. Now to correct it, I marked the 1 inch upward this way. Then I used ruler to trace it out. So after tracing it out, you know it will automatically affect the dart and also the zipper adjustment I made. So I had to correct those two. I measured the that side, the half inch at the side back and the center back. I measured it again. Then I trace it back to the bust point, and also at the zipper side I remeasured the half inch and I reconnected it back to the chest line this way. So next thing now is to draft the built-up neckline, and for that at the shoulder here I marked 1.5 inches. So I ruled it from there back to the shoulder, and having done with that I proceed to the neckline also, and I marked 2 inches upward to connect back to the shoulder. So I used curve ruler, and at that point I connected it also with curve ruler back to the shoulder slope this way, but I ensure it stopped at the 2 inches I divided the shoulder width. So you can see. Next I added additional half inch to the shoulder slope because of the shoulder dart. So I added half inch. So whenever we are connecting the shoulders together, we won't be short of fabric or short of measurement. So I extended it with half inch, then I reshaped it back to the arm side this way with the curve ruler. So after that I proceed to add the necessary allowances. So the one I used for the dart, 1 inch, I added it at the half length. The one at the underbust is not up to half inch, so I added everything accordingly, and I used ruler to connect everything back together. This is not the same allowance, this is just the dart allowance that I used. So now we are done with the back bodies. The next is to proceed back to the front and do the necessary corrections there. So I proceed to cut the back panel out. So for the front, I close the side dart up, and to do this, I need to open up the shoulder dart. So I flip the paper upside down to face my direction so as to make it easy for me to cut open. So I opened it up and I was able to fold the side dart this way. You can see I just split it on each other, that is the underbust, then I used sellotape to hold it down on each other this way. So by so doing I've erased the side dart. That's the 1 inch difference between back and front, and I just used pencil to reconnect the side not to be short of measurement. Now the next thing now is the built-up neckline, and for that first of all I marked 2.5 inch. You can do 3 inches for the neckline, it doesn't really count anyways. So I marked 3 inches for the depth of the neckline here, and after that I proceed to mark the built-up neckline. So for this, you remember I used 1.5 inch for the back, so I also maintained the 1.5 inch for the front here as well. So I marked the 1.5 inch upward and used curve ruler to connect just the way I did for the back. I connected it back to the 2 inches I divided, so you can see. So in order not to be short of measurement again, I had to retrace the slope this way. Next I marked half inch at the shoulder slope and I reconnected it back to the arm side this way, just the way I did for the back. Next I proceed to mark the built-up neckline, and to do this it depends on how low you want the depth of the neckline to be. So for me, I'll prefer the chest line. So I picked the cuff ruler and I connected from the built-up neckline down to the chest line. It's your preference, yours may be deeper than that and maybe higher than that. Next, having done with that, I proceed to the half length and I added back all the necessary allowances. This is not the seam allowance, it's just the half length, sorry, the dart allowance that I removed, I'm adding back. So I added 2 inches for the half length, and at the under bust, because I used 2 inches there as well, I added it back. Next, I jumped to the chest line and I used half inch there. So I added back the half inch, as you can see. Then I proceed to connect everything together with straight ruler. You can actually use your cuff ruler here as well. It's not necessary that you use your straight ruler, just know how to cuff it out very well. So I proceed to use the straight ruler and I label them accordingly, and as well I cut everything out. Now this is our front pattern. You know, we have cut our back pattern before. This is our front pattern and this is the back pattern. So I will set the back pattern aside and work on the front first. So for this, I've cut the fabric, I added interface, and I cut the lining as well. I also added seam allowance. As you can see, at the side I added 2 inches, and at the midpoint I added half inch. So this is me cutting the wording for the 2 sides. This is the middle part and these are the sides. So the next thing is to stitch the sides and the middle together. So I pick them this way, right side facing each other, and proceed to the machine to stitch. So this is how to go about it. You place each on the other this way and you pin round. Just ensure that the under bust align well. You notch the under bust before you pin, then you align them well and proceed to the machine to stitch. So after stitching, I ironed it, and this is what we have at the end of the day. This is how it looks. Next, I pick the lining because I stitched the lining alongside as well. So I measured the band side, that is the waistline. I added band to it. So for the band, I used the circumference I have at the waistline by 2.5 inches, but I added half inch to it since I'm just going to stitch it on the fabric. It's not as if I'm going to add it extra, it's going to be stitched on the fabric. So I used 3 inches for that, and I proceed to measure it out and cut. So I marked where it will be pinned and I pinned it this way. Actually, I like fixing the band this way because if I don't want it again, I can easily lose it out if it's not going to make sense in the style. So that's why I like fixing my band that way. And next, I proceed to stitch the lining to the main fabric. So we are done with the front piece. This is the back piece, and I've cut the lining as well. I added necessary allowances as well. And next is to stitch the two together. So I picked two differently and the other differently. So right sides facing each other, and the lining as well. You can see I've added interface to the lining too. So I proceed to the machine to stitch after pinning. This is what it looks like. So I've ironed it. You can see I ironed the inside open. So I've ironed it and I've ironed the lining as well. Now the next thing is to stitch the lining too with the fabric. So I picked the fabric, but before I did that, sorry, I had to add additional band just the way I did for the front. I added band 2.5 inches. So I cut it the same way I cut the front, and I added interface to the band, and I proceed to the machine to fix. You can see I proceed to the machine to fix it to the main bodies of the upper bodies of the dress. So, and after fixing this to the dress, this is what it looks like. I've ironed the two. Actually, this fabric does not really need ironing. That is the band side, because it's metallic, it's somehow stretchy, and when you place iron on it, it changes the color. So, and I proceed to fix the lining and the main fabric too on each other. You can see I stitched the neckline alone. So next, I place the front bodies on the back, then I stitch the shoulders together. Just follow what I'm doing here. Pick the front shoulder and the back shoulder this way, then you pin it around and proceed to the machine to stitch the two together. Very easy. Then after that, you can stitch the sides as well. Just ensure you are stitching lining and lining, and also the main fabric with the main fabric. So After doing this, I attached the skirt side, though I didn't show that because I only explained the upper body. So this is it on me. So thank you very much for watching this video to the end. If you have any question, please put it in the comment section, and please ensure you like and share the video as well. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so for more videos. Thank you. See you in my next video. Stay blessed. Bye.